Sounds good. I'll keep it very brief. But yeah, we thought this was, I suppose, this little webinar has come off the back of a few conversations we've had between partners and some of the COP leaders, and especially with the onboarding process over the last couple of months. Yeah, we've had a few little questions around the contributor agreement, and yeah, we thought it would be a great opportunity just to do a bit of a refresher and bring everyone up to speed with I suppose what's behind the detail, and yeah, just put it into context really. So I suppose from our end, AgriFutures Australia, our role at the partners level is really to oversee the management and the development of the extensionAUS platform. So us, along with AgVic and New South Wales DPI, as the three partner organisations, work closely together to ensure that everything's ticking along. And obviously, we mentioned in the last meeting, we had our annual partners meeting a couple of weeks ago, which was really positive, and yeah, just reconfirmed our commitment to the platform and ensuring that it continues to grow. And yeah, we can continue to promote the benefits. I suppose the other aspects of the partnership role, or the partner role, is to oversee the community practice development. So yeah, working alongside Gavin and the rest of the team, so Dennis on the IT side of things. It's really about supporting you as communities of practice to come on board, make the most of the platform, and ensure that you're equipped to run the show and deliver that impact within the areas of interest that you're working in. And yeah, I suppose finally, in a nutshell, it's really about collaboration, and I suppose at the partners level, it's about driving the vision for extensionAUS, and keeping the program on track and ensuring that we're continuing to deliver value for all of our members, any new newbies that come on board, and really, I suppose, looking for new opportunities to up the ante and make the most of the opportunities out there. So in terms of the, I suppose, the paperwork side of things, at the partners level, we agree to a participating organisation agreement. So this is an overarching agreement which grants access to the platform and gives the partners the right to operate the various communities of practice. So I suppose that's it in the simplest form, and probably not best to dig into all the details, but it essentially sets the scene, and from the legal perspective allows us to operate and bring all the communities of practice on board. And then at the next level, so when we've gone through the onboarding process, we have the contributor agreement, and that's what Gavin is going to talk to today. So like I said, it's just a really good opportunity to have a refresher, dig into some of the details, and ask any questions that might have popped up over the last little while as we've been going through the onboarding process. So I will pass over to Gavin, who will run into a little bit more detail. So yeah, feel free to add questions to the chat box as we go through, and we'll have a bit more of a robust discussion around it.
Thanks very much, Sam. And yes, this is really a look-see and to give you a good idea on how it all works. And so please do ask those questions, and we'll have opportunity to discuss it at the end. So I guess starting out is, what is the need for the contributor agreement process? And it really is part of the magic that's behind enabling communities of practice. So the online tools and then having a supported platform is one of the must-haves, I guess, and making things work as simply and efficiently as possible for you all, so you're not having to worry about IT. The next one, which is really perhaps even more behind the scenes, is the agreement process. That the head agreement that Sam was speaking about before, the partnership agreement, first enables, and then below that is the contributor agreements. But at the end of the day, it's really focused on enabling the experts, so your members, to collaborate and share information in real time. And in real time means that they don't have to go back through their own referral and approval processes, but that the contributor agreement process and the partnership agreement process that heads the whole, I guess, legal entity that is behind extensionAUS has all of those requirements met. So I'll explain it as we go through. So as a subset of enabling the experts to collaborate, what the stakeholders are keen on is to ensure that privacy is protected. So it does that also. It also protects each partner's intellectual property. The next area that I guess every stakeholder is, and contributing organisation in particular, is keen about is that the rights to publish and how publishing works and how things are reviewed, etc. So that is contained within the agreements, and so it gives them confidence, and also the contributor agreement process, the organisations, when they agree, give rights to publish. It protects liability, and I'll explain to that in a bit more detail. And it gives each organisation the right to contribute, and in doing so, warranties around that right, which again I'll explain as I go forward. Because this is a legal process, it's pretty fair that I give you a disclaimer up front. So this overview is really a general overview. As it is a legal contribution and it's a legal commitment, each organisation will have different individual environments, and we recommend that they do get their legal team or which professional they use for that sort of advice to give them advice about the detail of the agreement. But today we'll give you as leaders a really good understanding of the intent of the process without getting too far down into the legal jargon. Obviously, we're ensuring that everything is accurate, but again, that reliance factor, if you're getting into the detail of the agreement, please use your legal teams. So what will we explain? And Kellyanne actually was giving an example there where she's met with a community practice for the first time, and when you do get involved, and I remember way back, well, it's not way back, but it's 2013 when we first started getting our heads around things. It was a little like this, that you're in a bit of a maze and you're getting a lot of information, and together you're working out which direction you're going to head. Now, the structure of the agreements, how they're put together and the elements in them and the frequently asked questions, that's part of the way of helping these communities of practice participants and members get engaged and find their way forward. So we'll cover that in this presentation, but we'll also quickly give an overview again on how to get them completed and how that completion process can be tracked and recorded for each of your communities. It's easy for me to say because I'm pretty familiar with it now, but it is a simple process once you understand it. And again, it's one of those things, because you only pick it up at the start largely, and then occasionally as onboard new members, it is one of those steps that is forgotten, but it really is important to focus on it up front and get it complete, and learn this, what is a simple process, and make life easier for you and your contributors, because they really can't contribute, well, under the agreement, they can't contribute until they have signed a contributor agreement process, but it really is, I guess, due professional guidance by ourselves and as leaders to ensure that they do, to protect themselves and protect the organisations that we represent. So the structure, I'll just quickly cover that again. So there's 3 levels, if you like. So the partners, of which AgriFutures is the agent amongst them, they're all equal partners, and any one of them can be the agent for the platform. And at the moment, it's agreed that AgriFutures is the agent for the platform. Now, at that level, there are committees and groups that are managed. There is a service level agreement that protects each of the partners and guarantees a level of service for the platform, and also in how information is backed up and is made available to them if they need it. Within the service agreement and within the partnership agreement more broadly, there are different, I guess, allocations and commitments to platform support, and which my role and Dennis's role are a key component of that. So that's at the AgriFutures partnership level. So with that, those partnering organisations, they have what's called a partnership participating organisation agreement, and at that level, they make their decisions equally at their partner management meetings within the spirit of their agreement. They also participate in the committees and groups within the communities of practice as required. They are also then able to establish communities of practice, and within that, they are accountable for the contributor agreement process, which protects all parties, including the contributors. So a partner or a partnership participating organisation agreement is required before a community practice can form under extensionAUS. So that is those two processes. One, you've got a platform agent, and two, you then have an agreement of how you all operate as partners. That has to be in place. So a COP cannot form without the support of a partnering organisation. Down at the contributing organisation level, which is what you as leaders are responsible for on behalf of your partner organisations, those organisations obviously provide the contributors that are so important to you all, and they then sign a contributor agreement. So they agree on the terms and conditions in particular under which they operate. Now, down at the individual level, so slipping around to the quadrant on the left, an individual participant, so say a sole trader, can become involved in within a community of practice, and they can sign an individual participant agreement. It's not required, that's why I place that there in brackets, it's not required, and all partners have agreed to this. Once a contributing organisation agreement is in place, the employees of a contributing organisation are not required to do individual agreements. They are covered underneath the contributing organisation agreement. So for 99.9% of the cases that you all deal with, you will be dealing with organisations, and you need to get that authorised person within an organisation to sign off that their experts can participate in your community of practice. So down into a little bit of detail. So the intellectual property component of the contributor agreement process, this is an area that there are often frequently asked questions about. What happens to the IP? And particularly organisations that are contributing, that are contributing IP. So there's manufacturers that are involved in the auto milking area. They're obviously concerned about their IP and not giving it over in total, as an example. So under the agreement, each contributor still owns the IP to their underlying work, the work that they contribute to the community of practice, including any copyright. But what it does is that the participating organisation, so those that you represent, because there are collective works that everybody collaborates upon, of which some of the underlying works contribute, or sometimes it's unique work that you've all come together and done a particular article. The participating organisation owns the IP rights to the collective works. So if I, as Cumbray Consultants, contribute some work, and I'll show you an example in a minute, I give that and the rights for that to be used by the community of practice, and also the right to publish, but I still own the underlying IP if it's unique to me. Underneath that, I guess that IP commitment is a license. So within the agreement process, so the contributor grants a license to the participating organisation to reproduce and communicate their underlying works if they provided them. And within that process, part of the commitment is to sub-license to AgriFutures Australia, because they look after the sites themselves, the platforms. It gives them the right to reproduce and communicate those works on extensionAUS as underlying works or works in their own right, but also as components of collective works that you've all worked on. So that's how it works. The contributor retains their own IP where they provide it. The participating organisation has the ownership rights of the collective works, if there are such works, but the process grants AgriFutures the right to publish and communicate those works on your behalf on the platform. I might pause there quickly. Are there any questions on that IP component? Either pop them in the chat or come off mute. All good. So this is an example. So this is an article that I wrote for the community that I look after, so the extension practice area, that site. So it's an article on goal setting. So some of it I use from work that I have pulled together over the years working with groups and individual businesses, and then some of it's referred work to which I then refer to and reference in the post. And you can see that I make some, I guess, commitment within the opening paragraphs there to say that I'm proposing that the post will help them with their setting and reviewing of their goals. So it will help them make their goals well considered, and it will also help them meet the needs of their stakeholders who get involved. So I guess I'm, as a professional, standing behind the work that I'm contributing to the practice and saying that it will do so. Now, in doing so, we step into, well, not only the IP, so my IP is protected. I can use this work in my own, within our own businesses, but I'm granting permission to the organisations to use it. And in doing so, I'm giving a warranty. So, and I'll explain what the warranties mean. So the participating organisation, number one warranty, if you like, it warrants that the developer and operator, that it is the developer and operator of the community practice. And it does have the right to appoint you, your organisation, in inverted commas, as a contributor to participate as an expert within the terms of the agreement. So it is, it's ensuring that it does have permission to do that. And so you can then come forward as a contributing organisation in good faith. What the contributor does, and which I've done in that example, it warrants that the people who attend the communities of practice as members have got the skill, care and diligence that would be expected of an expert in that topic or in that field, and that their organisation then is responsible for loss or damage if third parties rely on COP content provided by them through to the community of practice. Now, none of the terms and conditions that are in these processes are unusual. They are standard, and they would be as if they had provided information to any other publicly accessible forum. It also warrants that the organisation, so the contributing organisation, has got the right to license the underlying works, and that in providing that that right to publish the works, it's recognising that it doesn't infringe on copyright or IP works or IP rights or breach privacy or is defamatory, etc. So again, a standard clause, but it protects the other parties that are involved. The other two areas, and a key area, confidentiality, is often asked about when we speak to people about the contributor agreement process, and dispute resolution, not that we anticipate any, but it is a process is there if it ever got to that stage. So confidentiality, under the agreement, each party keeps the confidential information of the other party confidential, and it uses the information only as contemplated within the agreement. So sometimes there are conversations that are in confidence at community practice member meetings, and sometimes there is underlying works that are provided. It might be detailed results from a particular research project or trial or experiment. It could be a report that hasn't been published as yet, but they're happy for the findings to be shared, but not the report. So these, I guess, circumstances do pop up occasionally. So there is an agreement on how that information is to be used and reviewed, and then all confidential information can be asked to be deleted or returned after use upon the request of any party. So that gives people the confidence that they know that their information will be looked after. If there is a dispute, initially the first step within the agreements points out that self-resolution without delay and in good faith is the first key step. And where we've had any, I guess, misunderstandings over the last 5 or so years of communities of practice, that has served the purpose, where there's been communication around it, resolution amongst the parties, and sometimes it's meant that some works that were initially proposed to be published don't get published, but it all goes forward and it's in good faith. To date, we haven't got to this stage, but the process is there to protect all parties, that if a party still is not happy and they're aggrieved, then it can be, under the agreement, placed with the Institute of Arbitrators and Mediators, that conciliation process can then be triggered, a more formal conciliation process. If that was not to prove satisfactory or have a resolution for all parties, then under the agreement, post 30 days of that process, a legal proceeding could commence. So I guess that is the end result and the ultimate consequence of a dispute that can't be resolved. It does enable a legal process to be enacted and people's rights to be protected by law if they feel they need to. Which leads on to relationship, which clearly must be stated, I suppose, is quite important because the COP aren't an entity of themselves. The organisations that either are contributors or part of the partner organisations at the top, they are still all independent. They come together with the terms of agreement and under the agreement processes, but they remain independent and they don't represent themselves as each other or as a combined party. So they are all protected underneath the agreement process. So it's really just an agreement to work together to share and publish information. The governing law are the laws of the state the participating organisation is in. We do need to clarify that, but we believe that that is the case. But in future presentations, we'll make sure that we are crystal clear on that. It was the ACT because that's where AgriFutures was previously based, and we believe it will. It obviously shifts with the participating organisation. We'll confirm that. For the contributing organisations, the commencement is on the date an agreement is signed. So their contribution starts when an agreement is signed formally. And termination, any participating organisation, so your organisations, can terminate a community of practice at any time. So they just give notice to themselves, as partners, and to the contributing organisations, and that is stipulated in the contributing organisation agreement. Equally, a contributing organisation can withdraw at any time. So that's the terms and termination. I'll pause there because the terms of use are really what provides a detail of the agreement process. It won't take long to flick through it, but are there any questions or points of clarification that people have or comments people want to make at this stage? Ruth is asking, is the term ongoing unless terminated by a party? Yes, that's right, Ruth. So the only overriding feature to that, Ruth, is that the partners meet each year, as they have just done, about their continued commitment to the community of practice approach. Partners can withdraw and not affect the other partners, but it requires under their agreement there has to be a minimum of 2 partners. So for the agreement process to continue, so that if all the partners decided to pull out or down to leaving AgriFutures alone, for example, then that would terminate the extensionAUS for all partners. And there is an agreed exit strategy within the partnering organisation agreements for data and so on. I guess we don't anticipate that happening, but you can never say never. So that is how it works. So whilst New South Wales DPI and the 2 other partners continue on, then there's no risk to your communities of practice. Just any other questions, just pop them in as we go. So the terms of use, what that really outlines to the contributor, because it's really directed towards the contributing organisations, it points out how AgriFutures operates a platform and provides it, and it stipulates that it's there for use by communities of practice. It points out that each community of practice is developed and operated with and under a participating organisation. The terms of use applies to all users of the website and the communities of practice and the tools. So each time a COP or a participating organisation engages another party, they have to agree to the terms of use and underneath the contributing organisation. The codes of conduct. So within the terms of use, each community of practice can individually decide upon their own codes of conduct. So this is actually an instrument whereby you can personalise some requirements and stipulate those as your own communities of practice. There is a template that can be used, and it's quite general. But say you had a specific requirement about a particular tool or a particular initiative of your community of practice, and the community of practice members needed to agree to do this particular process or use this particular tool unique to your community of practice. You can place that in the code of conduct for your community of practice, and therefore it becomes a stipulation, much as the terms of use about the other areas does, and therefore it's a legal basis for your community of practice. It stipulates that the agri-futures or the participating organisation can change the format, content, structure and method of delivery of the platform or the COP. So those entities aren't going to be hamstrung if there is a need to change. The technical working group, and there are other ways that suggestions can come forward, which you can see we all operate in good faith. But at the end of the day, the partners have to agree and enact things, and that's clearly spelled out. The responsibility for content, and this is a frequently asked question area, and all consequences flowing on from the content goes back to the contributor. Just as it would if I spoke at a workshop for you, or Ruth in her expertise in e-learning provided a fact sheet to another party. Ultimately, under the rule of law, the responsibility will come back to us as the providers of that. That's not unusual, but it's spelled out because the partnering organisations and AgriFuture as the agent isn't going to assume that responsibility for individual contributors' content. There are standard clauses of expected behaviour, and I'm not going to go through those in particular. They are standard, but they cover things such as you're not going to violate laws in your contribution to the community practice. You're not going to breach confidence of other parties. You're not going to waste the time or resources of other parties. You won't infringe any IP rights of those other parties. And, they could be patents on work that some people provide so you're not going to break, that might be known to you within the community. You're not going to break that patent and those rights of those other parties, etc. And the normal things like obscene behaviour and offensive material, etc. So those types of standard clauses that are in all such agreements are stipulated within the terms of use. The communities of practice and in the terms of use, but the approach is not really designed to substitute for professional advice. So, and that is stated within the terms of use. I mean, the information is relatively general in nature, and when it does get specific in posts or in articles, it relates to the source material. It might quote an expert, but it is not designed to replace that professional advice once you get down into the detail. And so the contributors aren't expected to operate at the level of providing independent advice. They're providing publicly available information that is more of a general nature in their commitment. The participating organisation and AgriFutures within the terms of use also have the ability to make sure that things are done correctly. So they can override if they need to. So if it's brought to their attention by whatever means that there's some content that has got through the net in any way that might be unreliable, or it's proven to be inaccurate or something like that, they can act quickly. They will inform the contributors and obviously the community practice. They'll work on getting the correction so that within the terms of use that is committed to, that they'll get you know, and aim at getting things corrected, but they do have the right to remove it or suspend operation if it's needed to. So that's just, I guess, a safety net for both those organisations, which is understandable. Both those organisations, again, within the extent permitted by the laws that override, they're not liable for any indirect or consequential loss from the contributor's access or use of extensionAUS. So, and in fact, later on, you'll see that they ask for an indemnity against that. So the contributors, I guess, contribute in good faith, but they assume their own risk in being part of a community of practice. The participating organisations aren't going to take on that risk. They're also responsible, the agri-futures and the participating organisation are not going to be responsible for the conduct of the contributors. So whether that be online or offline, that's also stipulated in the terms of use that each contributor is responsible for their own conduct. And then I guess the final point is that agri-futures or the participating organisation is not liable to the contributor or a flow-on effect to a third party from losses to a contributor or third party from content or technical issues. Now that is a frequently asked question, as is the previous one. You know, where does that, I guess, liability and warranty lie? It lies back to the contributor, which again isn't unusual. I mean, it is, sometimes it's a bit confronting for people that aren't used to dealing with the legal aspects. When you're employed as an extension person or a researcher within a state agency, you don't see and you aren't familiar with the warranties and liabilities that are assumed by your organisation. But because we're operating collectively in a collaborative environment, we have to state these up front, and often it's the first time that extension staff or research staff have seen clauses of this nature. But it's not to the legal departments of your agencies, because this is pretty much standard fare for the responsibility that organisations assume. And even small businesses like ours, we have to assume the same responsibilities and warranties when we operate. So what does that essentially mean? It grants an indemnity. So the contributing organisation indemnifies agri-futures and the participating organisation for losses due to any breach of the terms of use by themselves as a contributor. So that's really what they're saying, that they're going to operate in good faith. Their skill of the expert they're putting forward, they're going to stand behind. And if there are losses as a result of what they contribute, they assume liability for it. The last quite short section to go through is how to get them done, but I'm going to pause there. Are there any questions or points of clarification or even concerns with anything that I've covered? Or Sam, have I missed anything that you'd like to add?
No, all good from my end, Gavin.
Okay. Any questions or any points? Okay, so that's the detail. And hopefully this webinar in the future can be used as a resource to help people understand it, but we'll also provide this information at boot camps, and we're doing inductions anyway, but it comes with a lot of other material. What we've tried to do now is to make a really simple process to get your agreements done. And if you focus on, with your contributors, on stepping them through, and you've got quite a good understanding of the agreement and the intent of it beforehand, it can be quite a quick process. So Nico and Jess have been, and the auto milking community of practice, been a really good case study of late, and they've had 28 organisations complete their agreements quite simply and easily. They had one party that they needed to provide more information to and talk to in greater detail. But they've had contributors, they've had quite a number, well, several, or no, probably more than several, a few international contributors, and at least 3 international universities that have all signed the and agreed to the contributing organisation agreement. So by using this process. So in your Google Drive, there is an agreements folder. So it's one of the folders that's there amongst the other folders that you're provided with. In that folder, there are 3 items. So one is a Google form, which you can use for the contributing organisations to get agreement through. So it's an online process that legally covers the acceptance of the agreement, and it's there. There's also a Google Doc of the actual agreement itself, which is linked to the form, which means when you send that form to any party, they get a link to the document, the agreement, and they can read that agreement or they can print it out. Or in fact, they can save it to their own repositories. Then there's a Google Doc which gives a guide to using the form, and that's what I'm going to flick through now. So using the Google form itself. So you double click on it and then you open it up and it looks like this, like the image that's on the screen, and it's got up in the top right hand corner there's a send button. So you click on that send button once you're ready to distribute it to an individual organisation, or you can distribute it to more organisations than one at the same time. It'll open up a send form box. The send form box looks like this. It's very simple. It's a nice, easy template to use. And you just need the email address of the person who can facilitate the agreement process. It's preferably an authorised person that can actually agree to the agreement. But if not, the person that's going to facilitate that through to an authorised officer that can agree on behalf of that organisation. In the box, you can personalise a message to suit multiple contributing organisations or individuals. So you can provide personal messages. Once that's all done, you just simply click send, and that will then go through to a form record behind the forms. So the record looks like this. It's got the questions on the left and it's got the responses on the right. When you click on responses, it shows you who has responded, and it also shows you responses that are waiting to be completed. So you can track your responses by clicking on that responses box. You can resend invitations. So for those that haven't completed the process, you can resend the invitation to do so, or you can forward it onto other parties. You can add additional email addresses. So you open the form up in your folder to do that. So find the form, you'll get to this box. By clicking on the responsive tabs, it'll pull up a summary of all those responses. So it'll have the ones complete, who's completed it, who hasn't completed it. But you can also click on an individual response to see the detail around that party. Importantly, any person who completes a form is sent a receipt. So they get acknowledgement that their form is complete, and they know, they're confident that it's been received by your community practice. And that is it. So it's really about the engagement. The actual process of getting the form complete is really simple. The challenge is just making sure you're talking to the right person and that they actually complete the process for you. So simples, probably doesn't seem like it when you're getting involved, but the stepping them through the process is. But at the end of the day, seriously, we are here to help you or your contributing organisations. So that's part of our role as the agent for the platform. So please please be free to use us. So Ruth is okay. One for a schedule that was mentioned in the agreement. Yeah. So so there's a schedule that's mentioned in the agreement, which is a Word document template, which you can do. Essentially, what the schedule provides to people is it personalises the information about your community of practice. So it obviously has a name on it, the participating organisation, who the community of practice leader is, when it was initiated, and what term, if there is a term proposed for it, what that term is. Within that schedule, the community of practice and the participating organisation, for that matter, can stipulate any other, scheduled things or events that are unique to that community of practice. But the schedule essentially just personalises the agreement to that contributing organisation and clearly states what that organisation entity is and who the contact person is for that community of practice. Any other questions?
Hi, Gavin, it's Ruth. We have the contributor agreement from Queensland DAF. We're chasing the one from Uni of Sydney, and there's a few that are New South Wales DPI staff. Do we need to get a separate agreement within DPI for that? Do we need to have Julie or someone sign off on it?
That's a good point, Ruth. At the partners level, and perhaps Sam, you chip in, but originally there was a requirement for each community of practice to have an agreement done every time that one was scheduled. Julie, on behalf of New South Wales DPI, was looking at a process whereby a head agreement could be done for their organisation, for your organisation. I don't believe that's in place yet. So, yes, each time you enact a community of practice, you need to do that. Now, when you're a participating organisation such as yourselves, you are already covered. So, in your case, so irrigating agriculture, for instance, I know that which is run by Victoria, they required New South Wales DPI to have a contributor agreement to join that community of practice. In your case, where you are the participating organisation, you don't need that.
Okay, that's great, thanks.
Any other questions? Sam, any other points you want to make there?
No, I think you've done a very thorough presentation.
Well, thanks, Sam. So, Ruth, yeah, just to clarify that last point, I suppose, what the partners are trying to get to a point of perhaps is where a partnering organisation is involved in one or more communities of practice, they already have agreed as partners to the head agreement, which essentially is nearly all the terms that a contributor agrees to anyway. So they may have a process in the future whereby if you were to join a Victorian or a Agri-Futures-led community of practice, then we wouldn't have to replicate the contributing organisation agreement each time. But that hasn't been complete yet. Okay, if there's nothing further, we'll bring it to a close. Must thank Sam for reviewing things and also inputting into this process. And she, at the end of the day, the buck stops, this might be too strong a term, but Agri-Futures has to ensure the participating organisations, number one, are engaged and then flows through the contributing organisation. So they drove the template process. Thank you, Sam. Okay, excellent. Oh, I might shut it down now and thank you, and we shall see you at the next meeting. Bye for now.